that everybody's waited long enough, so I think we're going to get started. My name is Brenda and I'm an instructor here at Laurie's Country Cottage. And Laurie put us to a challenge of making something that was Christmas orientated for Christmas in September. But as you noticed, it's now November and we're doing it. So we're a little late, but that seems to be this year. So nothing goes on schedule in 2020, right? So I'm going to show you what I did, and I'm going to actually flip to the document camera, and the purpose of that is I'm going to be showing there, so you guys don't get to look at me all evening. You're going to be looking at what I've made. So I'm going to just flip the camera right now, and it should be flipping, and it's flipped. Okay, so I'll get my notes out of the way because I wrote notes so that I hopefully wouldn't forget to say something to you. Laurie wanted us to make something that was Christmas themed. And I love these silicone oven mitts. But I had a real issue, and I'll admit I'm cheap. I had a real issue with the cost of them and making something for Christmas that we would use for 1 month out of the year. And so I decided that I wanted to come up with a way that we could change the inserts and take out the Christmas one and put a spring one in if we wanted to. And then we would use that. And then when Easter, so this one I would use at Easter or spring because it was a nice, pretty butterflies. That's what I kind of like, the butterflies. And I could continue to use that. And then whenever Canada Day came, I could pull it apart again. And I could put my Canada Day one in, then my Thanksgiving one, a Halloween one, Christmas, whatever you like. Everybody has their own holidays or seasons that they like to celebrate. So I told Laurie I was going to do this. She thought it was a great idea and said, yeah, let's do this as our video. So it's only partially Christmas oriented. The one thing I really wanted to talk to you about is when you're picking fabrics. We'll start first with when you're picking fabrics. I have a lot of wine dinners where I used to have a lot of wine dinners where I'd invite friends over and serve different wines and pair them with the foods. And I love doing stuff like that. So I thought it'd be really fun to make a set that was wine themed for my wine dinners. So I picked this fabric and I thought it was pretty. But the problem is when you put it in here, you lose the wine bottles really quickly. And the wine glasses. I don't know if you could see in the camera, but even for myself, it's quite difficult to see the designs that are on here. So when I started doing some reading in that, what they recommend is that you get fabric that basically has a white background with a print on it. And these ones show up very nicely through the silicone. I don't know which way to say it. I also did a Thanksgiving one. Let me just move these aside for a second. And I just want to show you, just so for when you're looking at fabrics, that you have an idea of how it looks. Because this one had a light colored background, it wasn't necessarily white, but it was light. All the leaves still show up very well. So just to give you an idea, oops, I have somebody joining. Let me just stop and let them in. Okay. So that'll just give you a quick idea of some idea, when you're looking at fabrics, what you should be looking for. Okay. Brenda, joining. I just said okay to her. Sorry, just making sure that I have everybody in here. Yeah. Okay. Off again. Sorry, just doing one more little bit of paperwork here. Sorry, you guys. So as you're aware, you buy your Hot Stuff Oven Mitt package. That comes with the pattern on a paper template, and it comes with the instructions on how to sew it together. So it gives you all the instructions. The instructions actually, Barb, can I borrow yours for a minute? The instructions actually say the one that you made. I'm going to borrow Barb's. Barb made one. And what it tells you to do in the instructions is to actually sew these together. But we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it a little differently because we want to reuse it. So you're still going to want to go through your instructions because it talks about how to do the quilted stuff and it gives you measurements and that. But after that, you're going to want to listen to me instead of the instructions. Also, I'm trying to open this up here. There's the sheets of paper that have the oven mitt template on them. I decided that since I was going to be making a lot of these, I didn't want to cut the paper and fight with paper. So I went and they kind of stuck together. I went and traced these and used template plastic in order to do this instead of using the paper. Just because I was going to be cutting out, 10 of them because I was doing 2 of each because I like to have 2 oven mitts. So 2 of each color, and I wanted to do lots. I thought I would use the template plastic. One thing to note that when using the template plastic is that, spit out the words, Brenda, is that it's kind of slippery and moves around a lot. So I don't know if you could tell, this one kind of looks dirty almost. And the reason it does is I used a product called Ruler Magic, and I put a little dabs of it on my oven mitt where I wanted it, and I just took my finger and rubbed it in, and then I let it dry. And then after I let it dry, it's now sticky. Well, you can tell because look at it, it sticks. You can probably hear it releasing the stick, right? And what that gave me was the ability to put it on my fabric, and then I used my rotary cutter to cut around it, and I didn't have to worry about it moving on me. If you don't have Ruler Magic, because when I first started, I didn't, I put it down and I cut along the edge, and then once I cut, I used a couple of paper clips just to hold it in place. So I clipped the paper and the fabric together in a couple of spots after I did the straight edge, and then that allowed me to kind of move it around a little, turn my design a little so that I could get the cut down into the corner and back around again. So just a few things. So I made a template out of everything that was on the paper. So I'm just going to move the pattern aside for a second. Also, I wanted to mention is that if you wanted to do like I did and make 2, because I think you need 2, 1 for each hand, because I couldn't ever pick a pot out of the oven with just 1, I would end up tipping it. I would. You can buy the refills, and the refill just contains the 1 silicone sleeve, and but don't just buy the refill without the pattern because you don't have any of the templates for cutting anything. So, I want to talk about that. When you're picking fabrics, I mentioned about the colors. The other thing I wanted to talk about was directional print. And you guys can have a good laugh at me because, I never hang my oven mitts. So I always put them in my drawer. So when I made my oven mitt, I made it that it looks good when it's on my hand. And I look down at it and the trucks are right side up. Then they bring it into the store. And the first thing they do is they hang it. And now all my trucks, and they took the picture of it this way. And all my trucks are upside down in the pictures. They're all sitting like this. And I'm like, oh, Frank, that was bad. So anyway, just keep that in mind if you're using a directional print. Think about how you want to use it. Are you going to be hanging it up? If so, you want to set it so that the trucks or the design bottom is at the top of the mitt. If you're not hanging it up and you're going to just be putting it on your arm the way I do, then this is right, I guess. It's your oven mitt. You do it how you wish. But I just wanted to mention that to you because it is something that we were talking about, and I went, I don't think I did it wrong, but it's all personal preference. Okay. Because I was making so many at a time, I went and I picked up some muslin that we carry in the store, and I got a couple of meters of it, and I went and folded it in half And I just picked up the cotton batting that we have in the roll in the back of the store in the quilting room. And I used that for the inside of it. And so you could kind of see this is what I have in here. And then I took and I put it in my machine and I just did a great big loops because it's the inside of the oven mitt. And I just quilted it. So one layer, I cut the muslin in half, put one layer down, put some batting in, put the other layer down, and then I just quilted them together. And I did a great big sheet. You can't see my hands when I go that far apart, but I did a great big sheet. And then I used my template for the lining. I guess I shouldn't have put those so far away because now I'm reaching for them. Then I used my lining template and I laid it down on here. And I cut out 2 of them for every oven mitt. So, and then I'm going to stop at that and ask, are there any questions? Okay, then I'm going to keep babbling. So then once I got them cut
Bev,
out.
did you use any of that special batting, insulated stuff for hot things, the silver in your oven mitts?
I didn't, and thank you. You reminded me to say something that I had forgotten to. I did not use that, and I had some at home, but the pattern called for the cotton, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try the cotton. So when I made the wine bag ones, I brought them into the kitchen, and I said, or the wine bottle ones, sorry. I brought them into the kitchen, and I said, okay, everybody, we're using these for the next how long? Because I want to make sure these work before I go on a Zoom meeting and tell people that they're great. I want them well used. And one night my daughter was cooking this dish and she had her big Le Cousette pot, like her big casserole dish in the oven. And she had her oven set to 450. And she pulled it out of the oven after being in there for how long. And she's standing there with these and she had the silicone sleeve on top of it. And she's standing there holding the pot. And she's talking to me and talking to me and talking to me. And she said, no, they're really good, Mom, no problem. And then she goes and she's like, well, they're starting to get warm. And it's like, yeah, but you've been holding them for a couple of minutes. And then she continued to talk. And then she said, okay, I think I need to put it down now. It is starting to get really quite warm. And I'm going, yeah, but you know what? You were probably holding it a good 3 minutes, if not longer. So so after I did that on the one, we decided that it wasn't worth spending the money on the ones that have that reflective coating on them. Okay.
Okay. So, just a quick question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you use 2 layers of muslin. The pattern doesn't tell us to use 2 layers of muslin. So is but we do have a lining insert and we have the muslin. So we have to cut 1 of each. Is that what you did instead of, and that's why you did the 2 muslins?
I used 2 muslins, and however you say that, instead of using the quilting cotton or decorator fabric on the inside. Because I was in multiple at a time, I decided I wanted to be able to quilt a big piece of fabric and then go and just cut it apart. So what you're going to see on the inside is you're going to see the white oven, like the white of the muslin, instead of a printed fabric. So if we look at Barb's, on the inside of hers, she used a printed fabric. And I'm going to show you how I got around that, because I did put a bit of printed fabric just for appearance, but I didn't put it the whole way on the inside because I tell you, I'm cheap. This costed significantly. No, you used a printed fabric. That's what it called for, yeah. So anyway, after you cut it out, so you can tell I actually traced it on here and cut it out because you can see my blue pen. Part of that was because I was out at the lake, out at the cottage, and I didn't have all my tools with me when I was playing with these. So I traced it, I cut it out. Then the next thing you want to do is you want to take, and I'm not sure if you can see this on the camera, but I went and I stitched about an 1/8 inch away from the edge, and I just did a stay stitch. And the purpose of the stay stitch is just to catch the quilting and to keep it from unraveling. So it just gives you a little bit more security in your oven mitt. So I did that. That was the next step. And so I got the muslin all ready. I cut it out. Then I went to cutting out my fabrics. And I'm going to grab, we're trying to keep stuff off the table, so I'm keeping things clean. But now I think I'm moving away stuff too quickly, too soon. So I got to stop doing that. When you're cutting out the fabric, you have a couple of choices. You could do it from a fat quarter. So if I was just to take a fat quarter, and this one's folded really weird, but I could fold it in half. I could lay down my plastic template, and that will give me one oven mitt. I cannot get the second another set. So I have one for the front and one layer for the back, and I can make one oven mitt out of a fat quarter. So that's one option when buying fabric for this. The other option when buying fabric, and this piece was a little wider, but it still demoed what I wanted to show you. So I thought, okay, I just grabbed it out of my stash at home. If I take a piece that's 0.25, I can put this here, and I don't know how much of this can you see. It's probably hard to see on the screen, but I could take this here and I could cut this out. Then I can take, and I'm going to hold my fingers here, and I'm going to just slide it forward and hopefully keep it on. And I can flip it this way, and I can put it on, and I could cut it out. Did I use 0.2? I used 0.25, but now I'm looking at this thinking, well, maybe I used 0.3. Shoot. Anyway, 0.3, you could definitely do it. This piece must be a little shorter than the cottons, because I use all cottons, not batiks, and this is a batik, because this is fitting a little snugger than what my ones were that I had made. So I would probably go 0.3, and you can get your 2 mitts cut out if you put one down this way and then one down. I can't do it. Flip it around, right? And put your 2 thumbs towards each other. So make sure when you put your first one on here that your flat edge of the mitt is up against the cut edge of the fabric. And then you can get the two together out of with the fabric, and I go for 0.3. So, and then you just cut them out, normal cutting, the way you normally would to cut anything out. I also then, and I didn't, I'm going to just put something underneath me. I also then cut out my cuffs, and when I cut out the cuffs on the mittens, I used a contrasting fabric on all of them, and I used the template. When you're cutting out the cuffs, please cut out 4 cuffs. So one for the outside, one for this outside, one for the inside, and one for the other inside, which is how I got away with using the muslin fabric on the inside, but have it look, just glance in, you can see that it's, it looks like it's got the contrasting fabric throughout. So, and again, I used a template to do that. I know you can't really see that on the camera. So, and I cut it that way. Okay.
Another question.
Yeah.
So if we use a colorful cotton on the inside, then we don't have to cut out 4 of the cuffs, right? We could just cut out 2 of the cuffs.
That is correct.
That onto the template B, which is the longer one, right?
Yeah. So you would, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So now we're going to get into sewing the mitten together. So on this one, we're going to start with Valentine's Day. What I did is I put my cuff down, lined up the 2 edges, stitched it with a 1/4 inch seam, and I folded it over and pressed it. You notice that I put interfacing on here. I had in my mind that because it was going to be outside of the silicone cuff, that I wanted the interfacing in order to give that cuff more stability. On the ones that I showed you with the wine bottles on it, I did not interface that cuff, and they've been wearing fine. So it's a step I did that wasn't worth it, but I already had these samples made and I wasn't going to remake them. So anyway, sew that to both sides of your, to both sides of your oven mitt. So you've got your 2 mitts, and you need to add your cuff to both, and then press the seam allowance towards the cuff side. Then after you do that, you want to, actually I could do that with this one. Then after you do that, you want to put your 2 oven mitts together, right sides together, line them up. And you should have, when you cut it out, I forgot to mention this, when you cut it out, you need to mark, I'm going to zoom for a second, okay? I hope I don't make anybody dizzy doing this because I want you to see what I'm trying to show you here. You need to mark, sorry, it's really hard to figure out which way I need to go with the zoomed in. You need to mark a dot. And this dot is marked on the pattern sheets, on our white pattern sheets. It's actually marked. I'm going to grab that for you and make sure I put that out. It's actually marked. And that is your pivot point. So when you're sewing, you're going to sew 1/4 inch seam allowance. You're going to come down. You're going to stop here. You're going to pivot. And then you're going to go back up the other side. Okay, let me zoom out again because I don't want to show. I hit the wrong way. I'm sorry, you guys. Okay, is that the right depth? Maybe I'll do one more up. Okay, so then you put right sides together. I pin because I've got matching seam allowances going the same way. I made sure to pin on this point. I matched and pinned on this point because that's on the outside of our oven mitt. We want it to look really good. And then I put pins around the outside of it, and I stitched around here with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then once I did that, so I'm going to try and show you, and it's not going to show up. But anyway, you can see that I've stitched down here with a 1/4 inch, and I've got this now sandwiched together. I'm going to try and show you that. Then your next thing that you have to do is press your seam allowances open. So you need to come in here and you need to press them open. And I tried to use my sleeve roll because I thought that would work for pressing it open, but it was just too big and cumbersome to get in here, especially once I started getting up into the thumb. And I wasn't going to use my finger on the other side of the iron because I decided that wasn't a good idea. So I went and grabbed a tea towel, and I rolled up the tea towel and made a small like sleeve roll. And I pushed it up inside of the thumb, and then I used that in order to press the seam open. And then I pressed all around. Oh, okay, sorry. I apologize. I missed a step. Jeepers here, I thought I was so organized and I missed a step. Before I pressed everything open, I clipped. So you want to go in here, you want to get rid of the excess in this point. So it's going to be really, maybe I'll just hold it up and maybe you can see it better if I hold it up. But you want to get rid of the excess fabric in this point. So when you turn it right side out, and then I clipped all of the curves. Oh, Barb has an idea. She's wondering if you could put the mitts together with the silicone on the inside and the mitt, this part on the outside. She's smart lady here. I thought I was smart, but she beat me here. So she literally has put the silicone sheet inside of this and is saying, then we could iron it and hold it and use that. I hadn't even thought to do that. So anyway, you do want to somewhat try and press the seam open. Good luck, because it's a real pain. And good luck. But the really main areas that it really matters is right here at the cuff, because the rest of it, it doesn't matter that much. And so then what I thought is, so what if I didn't press it open? Because I was fighting with it, right? So I just laid it down and I just pressed it flat. And I thought, well, that looks just as good. So I'm telling you that I fought with it, but I'm giving you options if you don't want to do it that way. Okay? So now we have our sleeve. The outside of the oven mitt is done. And we turn it right side out after it's pressed. But you can see why we want to press it, right? Because if we didn't, it's not going to look very nice. It's not going to sit well. So we turn it, we have it right side out. This one, I did want to show that if you didn't press it open, it's not the end of the world. It's still going to work for you. And we set these aside. So the outside is now ready to be sewn together. Now we have to finish making the inside. So the first thing we're going to do on the inside, let me get my piles here in the right order, is we're going to take and we're going to mark a line on our lining fabric about 2 inches down. So, and the 2 inches was actually from, oh dear, can you see, am I on the camera enough? The 2-inch line is actually from the longest part of the curve. And I went and I drew a line, and I'm not sure if you guys could see it, but I drew a pink line right here. And then I butted up the cuff fabric, and I stitched with a 1/4-inch seam allowance. And then once I stitched it, I folded it over and I pressed it flat. Now, because the cuff is actually meant for the outside piece and not for the inside piece, it's a little bigger. It matches fine on the top. Well, it would match better on the top if I had it lined up better. There, this one matches better. It matches fine on the top, but as you can see, it's about 1/8 of an inch too big. And they did that on purpose on the pattern in order to allow the lining to go inside of the outside of it, right? So at this point, you could just trim that even, or you could just leave it. It doesn't really, really matter. But I just wanted to point out that it's just going to be a smidgen big on you there. So then after you get the cuff on, you're going to want to take and just do a stitching line. I did mine at about 1/8 of an inch. You could anywhere under 1/4 of an inch. Just don't go, because you don't want it visible. And basically all that's doing is just putting those two pieces together and holding them together so that it doesn't move while you're sewing the cuff. Then the next thing you do is you line up. Well, I guess I should show you with this one that's still apart. Again, line these up so that, you know, your good fabric is matching, your thumb part's matching, and pin it together and stitch 1/4 of an inch all around so that it's all stitched down around. When you get to this part, you notice that on the lining, there's no pivot point. We actually just do a nice curved seam around here. Because this is on the inside, it's not going to get turned right side out. This is already right side out per se, right? So you just do a nice seam around here. Then when you're done, you get to press this one open. And this one, I actually did take the time to make sure that I pressed it open the whole way. But I have to tell you this, I used this and I just sort of went along here with the tip of the iron. And I moved fast enough that it didn't burn my hand underneath. So I did do that. And then on these ones, I kind of just used my fingers to fold it back. I did a press, flipped it over, used my fingers, folded it back, and did another press. Because basically, you just want to soften that up a bit so that it'll go inside of the other mitten. So once you get all that done, we're now ready for assembly. So I have lots of mitts here, don't I? Does anyone have any questions before I go on to the next step?
Bren, you said to cut four cuffs. Is that 4 for the outside and then 2 for the inside?
No, 2 for the inside and 2 for the outside. I can show you right here. So 1 on this side, 1 here, and then 1 in here, and the other one's here. So 4 all total.
Thank you.
Oh, for 1 mitt. Barb's reminded me to say. Mm-hmm. All right, I need to grab a drink of water there. So now I have my lining all sewn together, and I have my outside all sewn together. So now what I need to do is put them together as a sandwich. Really easy. Well, minus all the threads on this one. I take it, I put it in my hand, and I just slide them together and I line them up. And you will notice that when you do this, your outside is actually longer than the lining. And they did that on purpose because just to give you a little bit of playroom in that, it's not a big deal. It's not much. So line up your 2 edges so that they line up. Make sure your seams are sitting open, and make sure your seam on your which they don't want to sit open, by the way. Make sure that's sitting open. Can you see that? Yeah. Sorry, I keep checking my screen to make sure that you guys can see what I'm doing. So I would line up these two seams and I would pin it there, or use your binding clips. And then I would line up these two also and clip it or pin it. And then in the center here and do that. And then once you do that, you then take and you do a stitching line under 1/4 of an inch. So about 3/8 of an inch from the edge, you want to do a stitching line just to hold those two pieces together. So now our oven mitt is ready for just to be finished.
Okay.
Yeah. So cut your binding. I cut it the exact size that they said in the pattern. I don't like to try and iron a circle. So I went and I folded it in half. And I ironed the crease down the center of it first. Then once I had it folded in half, then I lined up the raw edges on the long way. So I lined up these edges and I stitched 1/4 of an inch seam allowance and I pressed the seam open and then I folded it back on the crease. And then I just gave it a little bit of iron right here on the seam just to make sure it laid nice and flat. So then what I would do, well, if I had the right one for the right mitt, is I put this on here, lining up that seam that I just did with the back of the mitten. And then I would have marked center and I would have lined up the other side on the front, on this part of the mitten. And then just give it a little bit of a tug and bring it up and pin it on this side so that you've got your binding there. And then what you're going to do, I'm trying to keep my work area clean because I have so many samples. So as you can see, I did the stitching line at 1/4 of an inch here and I went all around. My machine has the open arm. So I just put it in the arm like this and I just twirled it around and stitched it. You could do it that way or you could stitch from the inside, whatever you prefer. And then once you've got your cuff like that, you fold it over and fold it over again. And you have a finished, actually I should grab this one because it matches. And then I hand stitched mine down. That's a personal preference. If you prefer, you could just do a stitch in the ditch along here and stitch your binding down. I felt like it was really wide. And if I had have done that, I would have had this flap of fabric sticking out. So that's why I hand stitched it. The other thing I did is because the outside fabric is a little longer than the inside lining, I found when I was putting it into the silicone sleeve that it was all bunching up in here on me. So I went and I just did a stitch in the ditch right along between the cuff and the main part of the oven mitt. And that way, when I put it in the sleeve, it just slides right in. Yeah, make a liar out of me, but it's not really that hard. I'm videoing this, so of course it's going to stick that time, right? And then you've got your finished product. And that's all there is to it. Is there any questions?
None on this end. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining me. And I hope you enjoy making your mittens and you make lots. They're a great gift idea because you could give them the Christmas one or for this time. And then on birthdays and Easter or whatever, if you go to I was thinking my mother-in-law's, as I go to her place for each meal, I could bring her a new insert for that theme of whatever dinner she's making.
Oh,
Okay. Thank
very
you.
good. Very nice. Thank you.
Thanks. It was nice to see everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. That was great.
Bye.
Bye.
Anything for me in the drawer?
Nope, there was nothing for Sue. I'll ask Lisa tomorrow to see if they've got it in and if she's mailed it. Okay.
Yeah, well, I ordered a bunch of stuff, so I said, may as well keep till everything comes in. So,
Oh,
yeah. But if it's not, yeah, I can phone the store tomorrow and talk. That's fine.
Okay, sounds
Good.
good. Thank
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Brenda, I do have a question.
Yes, Liz.
Are the replacement of silicones in yet?
Do you know what? I do not. I was flipping back to me. Sorry. I do not know. I should have done that before I said bye to everybody. I do not know if they are or not. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I can find out on Thursday. I'll be in on Thursday.
Yeah, that's true. I'll see you.
You betcha.
So we can look when you come in for my class.
Absolutely. Okay. Thanks again, Brenda. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.